Through Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, and welcome back to Through Scottish Prism. Great to have you here. Been a week since we last had a wee chat. Hope you and yours are well. I hope you like to see that in the background there. I've got the picture of this here. It looks as if I've got two horns sticking out my head, so those people are thinking I'm the devil's spawn. There you go, you've got a good screenshot. Lots been happening, lots to talk about. Let's get the gang in, starting right away. Over there in North Dakota, our man Phil.
Howdy, Roddy.
Howdy, my friend. Nice to see you. And then because we got spend little time introducing and more time talking on matters. So let's bring in our favourite lawyer up there in Clackmannan. Eva.
Hiya, Roddy. This is the kind of week I've had. Show you.
Too much for bullshit. Quite right too. And of course you'll be on your way to Aberdeen tomorrow, eh? Perhaps not. So while we're getting our Eva back, let's bring in up in Aberdeen already. Our Yvonne.
Hi, Roddy. How are you?
I'm tickety boo. Always better for seeing you, my friend. Are you
It's
going to be on your
really-
best behaviour tonight?
I'm not really into dancing or singing.
Right, well, that's good. As long as you're on your best behaviour, then we're okay. You're
And I
not going
don't
to Cayley.
think so.
You're going to Cayley tonight, aren't you?
Well, I'm not sure if I'm going yet or not. I'll see how I feel.
Well, we'll see. In this chilly weather, we need a weatherman. So let's bring in Mr. Quinnan.
How you doing, Roddy?
Hey, Lloyd, how are you, my friend?
I'm well. It's been an interesting week and a very interesting afternoon.
Yes, things are mounting up. Just before we come on, of course, it was announced that your friend and mine, Mr. Russell, has resigned.
Yes, to go and look after the interests of his landowning friends, I believe.
Yes. Well, I wonder what he's going to do with his horse box. I wonder if he'll take that with him. It should be full of enough horse. And talking about where's our Eva? Let's bring her back in again. No, well, Eva will join us. She's there. We know she's relevant. But let me start. While Eva's coming back in, I'd like to start, folks, on the week on Mr. Tommy Sheppard in the House of Parliament. Techie, can you stick up that video of Tommy Sheppard?
Let's be clear here. We are talking about the administration of work permits for people from overseas who wish to work in Scotland on a temporary basis. Just about everyone thinks that would be better administered in Scotland, but the Secretary of State insists it should be centralised by his government in Westminster. His argument would be plausible if the UK could demonstrate that it is doing well with managing the migration service. But given the catastrophe that is the UK immigration system, when is he going to wake up and realise this would be better done in Scotland by the people who live there?
Well, Phil, let's start with you in that one. It's the season of Christmas, and you usually put on the Oliver Twist film at this time of year. And if ever was a case of anyone saying, please, can we have more? Here was Tommy begging for more devolution. There wasn't a hint of let's have independence. It was all about let's have more devolution.
Yeah, and I was quite a fan of Tommy. He was a friend of mine when I was down there, and he's quite a likeable guy, though he obviously has let down the side quite a few times playing into the corrupted SNP leadership, like Neil Gray and so many others. But Tommy on the plus side stands up for the anti-war stance that Scotland's holds true, and it so resonates with the Scottish people, including myself. But on this point, Tommy's it's exactly that. It's why are we continuing to try to play the game down in Westminster when the primary objective has been in the SNP, now long since abandoned, get freedom for ourselves to run ourselves. Now, more powers is gradually becoming. I think more and more people are realizing it's the trap that we keep falling into, the devolution trap. For me, it is going on too long, and the more normalized this becomes, the more accepted this doctrine and philosophy seems to be, and it's not good enough. It's more about showmanship, point scoring, and retaining your seat in the gravy train. The situation down at Westminster now, and we need a complete swing to the radical from where the SNP currently stand, and that means they should all just switch to Alaba. It's as simple as that. That's what we need. People talking about what matters to Scotland and gaining its independence. This Oliver Twist nonsense is poor. It's weak. It's unoriginal. It's pandering to the woke. It's pandering to those who would just simpler mouthpieces for what is effectively just an arm of the British establishment, the Scottish government. But this is the British establishment, and you're just playing along with their game. It advances us nothing. It takes us no further forward. Just forget about that. I know there's an argument, do the day job, and that means stand up for your people, including those who want to stay in the union. But if you're SNP, your drive should be to get independence. This does not help us one bit. And until you rebel against the current leadership and stop pandering, as Tommy did, to the corrupt leadership of the SNP, then you're just another mouthpiece of the establishment, and you're not helping the people of Scotland one bit.
No, Lloyd, in fact, Tommy, I believe you're one of his constituents. And I remember you saying to me earlier when you were an MSP in the early days, where my great hero, Winnie Hume, would come up to you and say, "What have you done today, Mr. Quinnan, to advance the cause of independence?" Would you say that your Member of Parliament was advancing the cause of independence by begging an English Prime Minister and government for more powers?
Absolutely not. But the measure of the man was in his maiden speech in the House of Commons, where he stated to all that were listening that we weren't there to upset the apple cart. We weren't there to argue for independence, is in actual fact what he said. And that, to me, is the central problem, and has been the problem since he was nominated in the very first place in 2015. In the parliamentary group between 1999 and 2003 in the Scottish Parliament, had the issue of immigration come up, not one member of the SNP group would have taken the line that was just taken by Mr. Sheppard. Our line was straightforward. It's only with the powers of independence we'll be able to address the issues that are central to our country, immigration being one of them. We are the part of the United Kingdom with the most ageing population of all. And yes, we do need a separate immigration policy to the United Kingdom, not within the United Kingdom. But what it exemplifies is these Tommy and many like him who came from the shell that was New Labour, their first thought isn't independence. Their first thought is, what can we maintain within the UK? Because they don't, and he very specifically does not believe independence is either desirable or achievable. And that's just the simple, straightforward up and down of it. It's a disgrace that Scottish National Party members voted for someone who, much like Michael Russell, is verbose. But if you actually listen to what he says, it contains nothing. It contains nothing that advances the cause of the people of our country. And it's simple, as straightforward as that. He does not believe independence is achievable. He does not believe it's realistic. And he is hiding behind the effort that hundreds, nay, thousands of people have given to the cause of independence over the past 70 years. It's a disgrace.
It sure is, Yvonne. Now, you're one that's always telling us we always need to get angry, we have to do more. And we remember again, my big hero, when he's saying, we're down there to settle up for Scotland, not to settle down. Tommy's words are the man of one who's there to settle in, settle up, settle down, rather, and get comfy. Give us more. Just give us more.
Well, describing him as Oliver Twist, I think you've got the wrong character. I would go more for Uriah Heep. the Charles Dickens character from David Copperfield, who pretends to be humble and who wants to serve well. And he just, he's on his knees, and somebody needs to tell Tommy that is not a good look, not in the House of Commons, and he needs to get up off his knees, and then the great might not seem that great. Not that I would call them great, but he probably would. And Phil, so busy telling everybody to join Aliper, I'm waiting for you to jump ship.
Well, you got that one right in the chin there, Philly boy. Right on the chin, took you out. But we're still waiting.
I'm
We
taking
know that
no prisoners today.
our Eva's rebooting. She had a problem. She'll be joining us shortly. But while we're waiting on her, there was Tommy. Please, sir, may we have more, sir? 3 bags full, sir. And then I've got a clip here I want to show you of another man who's got a different view. Techie, stick up our Alec.
The stewards of that sovereignty don't lie in the Supreme Court in London, or with the King and Parliament in the Palace. Now exercise that right, that responsibility in conjunction with the community of Scotland. And no one would be more enthused than Aliper if the SNP now
Acted on independence. That's what we need to do, Phil. We need to act on independence, and now, as we've been saying. And Alec's right. And the signs are right, because we had an opinion poll this week, albeit could be an outlier, and I want to ask what you all think on that. But it's showing that 54% of the Scottish population still want independence. In the new Ipsos survey, maybe an outlier, may not be. But, it's in line with a lot of the polls that have been that independence is high, whereas the SNP numbers are dropping.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see. It's always great to see these polls. And the SNP are down, and that's a significant element here. This is the disconnect the SNP leadership have brought upon themselves and upon the party, because it's as designed and planned. The divide and rule policy of the UK establishment continues to succeed through the manipulation of the weak, greedy and unprincipled within the SNP. So what we need is and it's something we talked about regularly here, it's when is the timing right? Because it is obvious to anyone paying attention who is not blindly following, who's not sticking their fingers in their ears, that the SNP is corrupted and is no longer on the path to independence as its primary principle. And when then do those with enough vision to see this and enough courage to stand up for the people of Scotland and enough empathy with the people of Scotland not to serve their own self-interests in terms of their gravy train seat, when will they actually get together, make a decision in unison, either deconstruct the leadership's direction within the SNP or jump ship? Because what Alec's saying is bang on the money. We've been saying it for a while. It's why he's out the party. It's why he was hounded out the SNP. He made the SNP what it was when it was great. And then as soon as he handed over the reins, as we've talked on many occasions and illustrated in many times, the SNP just fell apart and became a toy, a plaything, and became manipulated, or its leadership certainly was manipulated by the British establishment. And that's the ruins that we now see of this once proud party. So no, it's long, long overdue. And when I ask all my fellow ex-colleagues, be they MSPs or MPs, when is the time? When are you going to do what's right for the people of Scotland? When are you going to stop self-serving? When are you going to stop looking to climb up the pole for yourself? When are you going to stop looking at your next, to retaining your seat? And when are you going to do what you're supposed to do, which is stand up for us, the people of Scotland, who need you? Right now, the world's heading into it. The West in particular is heading into some serious trouble economically. The poverty's been well recorded, well documented, and the people who are responsible for this, the only people who can change that are our elected politicians. So when are you going to stand up and do what's right for the people of Scotland instead of for yourselves? Now it is so clear that now is the time to do it. Do it, please, for the sake of the people of Scotland and our country.
Yvonne, it couldn't be more stark, the difference between Tommy's begging and Alex saying, you know, it's the people, the Scottish people have got to become foremost in all of this. I know which one I should prefer.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Alex leads from the front. He is leadership material. And, you know, if he said, come on up the hill and let's go over, I would follow him. Tommy Sheppard, not so much. He doesn't have that presence, that command, that stature. And watching him on his knees in the House of Commons is not a good look. You can see why the British state worked so hard to get rid of Alex Salmond, and it was probably one of the worst led and intelligence operations because it relied on fools to do the work for them. And of course, he's made this announcement that we've all been waiting for, that you know, he's going to get justice or wants to get justice through the courts. And so many people want to see this happen. And I'm sure that that he will rise up again. But it's like that Japanese thing, I can't remember what it's called, but once something's broken and then put back together again, it's stronger than ever. And that's what I believe Alex is. You know, he's stronger than ever. He's got great vision, great ideas. And as long as he is the de facto leader of the independence movement, I'm optimistic, because I know if opportunities are out there, he'll seize them, he'll identify them. And the SNP, I'm sick of talking about them. You know, that it's like having a wake every week. They're dead and buried. They're, you know, deader than the Monty Python parrot. Not even worth raking through the ashes now.
Eva, great to see you back, my friend. We lost you for a bit. We're getting worried. But I've shown two videos, one of Tommy Sheppard begging for more devolution, and one of Alex saying, let's, you know, never mind devolution, let's go for independence, let's do it now with the Scottish people, let's do it. The contrast is just, it's polar apart.
I hope you can hear me okay. I'm on my phone now, computer having died. The contrast between the two could not be greater. And, you know, I go much further than Yvonne's comments there about when something's broken and it comes back together, fixed, it's stronger. The hard fact of the matter is that the independence movement in Scotland is full of people who are strong, real tough cookies that have fought the battles over the last 20, 30, in some cases, some of us 40 years. We know what has to be done. We know what we need to do. We're taking on the might of the British establishment. And the problem in the SNP is that the leadership there now comprises people who are either too soft or too stupid to get their act together, to be sufficiently bolshy and determined to give the people of the country the steel and the strength and the courage and the heart that they need to line up behind. You know, we have in Alec and in very many others across the whole movement, people who are strong characters, who are not afraid. And if they are afraid, they don't show it. And they certainly don't settle down and they don't lose their bottle, which is exactly what Tommy Sheppard and the people round about him are doing now on a daily basis as regards Scotland, because all they're looking to do is to hold on to their own seats. They are not arguing against anything that's happening at Westminster. They're making the odd plea now and again, and they're embarrassing the country because they don't have the gumption to stand up and fight. And that is what is needed to be done. You know, we've had all these years of praying for another Section 30, wheedling away, pretending that they want a referendum, writing daft letters, talking about writing daft letters, and just prone to making more and more gaffes instead of having the courage and the intellect and the vision to have a proper concerted, united campaign where people are able to say, we demand our independence. And that is the difference between Alex Salmond and Tommy Sheppard. Tommy Sheppard settles down. Alec wants to settle up. The people of Scotland settle up. We've got at least 54% support for Scottish independence. I believe it's actually a lot higher than that. But we need action from politicians and from civic leaders that will enable the people's voices to be heard, not for the sake of independence alone, but because of what we can do when we are an independent country again. I was worried this week about a couple of cases that I know about in Scotland to do with children who are either in care or need to be in care. And there's a very grave shortage of foster carers in Scotland, to the extent that if there is a child who needs to be away from home, in my area at the moment, the nearest foster carers are a 3-hour drive away. So that if a kid had to go into care, then they would have to change school, they would lose contact with family, they would lose contact with their friends, they would be completely uprooted and in what is pretty much an alien and strange environment. And a lot of that is down to money. Had we our power over our own resources, issues like this that are bread and butter day to day, affecting the lives of very many vulnerable people, would be able to be addressed holistically, appropriately and without delay. There's waiting lists just now for the Child and Adolescent Mental Health Service for urgent cases of priority where children are self-harming, where it's agreed they need to be seen immediately. And the urgency, the priority waiting list is 18 weeks. That's the best it gets anywhere in the country. That's how drastic these things are these days. So the people like Tommy Sheppard and around him who think that time is on their side better think again. Because there are very many people in Scotland that are so vulnerable that they want people, they need people to take action today, not to sit down and lie down and give in, grovel and beg. These days should be consigned to history. We need people to stand up and stand up for the people without delay, because only more people will suffer unnecessarily, particularly over this hard winter.
Yeah, indeed. And Lloyd, you were saying that the stark difference between Tommy Sheppard and Alex Salmond is night and day. But also, our First Minister's over here in Dubai. Maybe I'll pop in and say hello to him, see if he'll do me a exclusive interview. I wouldn't hold your breath, folks. I don't think that'll happen. But he's over here talking about net zero and on the periphery. He's not even in the main. There's Alec still talking about independence. You know, when are the people going to wake up, Lloyd?
I think the people are waking up, and we can see that from the opinion polls. 54% of the people, minimum, I agree with Eva, I believe it's higher, support independence. But only between 32 and 36% support the Scottish National Party. And that's drifting down the way. But do you know what I would love to hear come out of Dubai, out of this COP? Is that what Hamza's actually doing there is he's speaking to people that are going to make the Grangemouth refinery not close down. That's all the expertise in the oil industry across the world is gathered right where he is at the moment. The best Christmas present he could bring the people of Scotland would be to come back from there, having struck a deal to maintain the refinery at Grangemouth. But unfortunately, we all know that ain't going to happen, unfortunately. But this is an opportunity for Hamza to make his mark as himself, as the leader of the Scottish National Party. The proposal from Ash Regan, the statement from Alec, now's the time to get behind that and show that they are still the party of independence. He's got an opportunity here. The opportunities are being given to him. Will he take them? Time will tell.
We'll see. Well, a great segue there from me, Lloyd, into it, because Techie, can you stick up Ash Regan's comment there on her the St Andrew's Day declaration? And this came out, Phil, but a lot of people are trying to misrepresent it, saying, oh, Aliber's still going on for a Section 30, not what they're saying at all. And it shows again that the Aliper Party and Alex Salmond, let's be honest, Alex Salmond's behind this, has got a plan. You don't want Scotland United? Here's another plan. Let's do it. Let's get behind this. It was a rather good masterstroke, was it not?
Yes, and not surprising, to be honest, because we know there are enough of us who recognise the Prime Directive needs to be supported, and we need different routes. We need different options to make sure we can make this happen. And Alex and Ash was so frustrated in the SNP by the lack of action towards independence that she jumped ship. So yeah, no surprise. There's plenty of ways you can do this, but none of them are being adopted by the SNP, and that's what's absolutely critical at the moment. And then you obviously Humza being in Dubai, net zero, talk about Grangemouth. Tommy Sheppard, we talked about earlier, was also voicing his concerns about this alleged to avoid a worsening climate catastrophe. So Humza's over there mouthing something, as you know, that I have serious reservations about. I've got serious reservations about the climate change catastrophe that's supposed to be impending. Yes, there's no denying that man is affecting the climate around us, but I just don't see the evidence. I've researched it. I started a PhD on this, which I'm not going to finish. But it was what I found very early on was we're all taking for granted assumptions or statements made by scientists, and a lot of them are bought, and that really came as a surprise to me, because I started believing, that, well, obviously that you make, there's some obvious things. Don't put plastic in the ocean, like filter out toxins, don't, but CO2 is not one I'm concerned about. And the green energy is a bit of a con, because it's the subsidies to investors primarily that's driving your energy bills up. And the other thing that Humza and the rest of those at COP28 seem to ignore is, who the hell do you think you are to deny the emerging nations of this world and their peoples the right to develop comfortably a more modern lifestyle? I mean, I'm in the US still at the moment. 4.5% of the world's population using about 20% of the world's energy to live very, very well. And that's pretty much across the board in the West. Narendra Modi, PM of India, was brilliant on this. He likened the green energy push and anti-fossil fuels doctrines. And they're in China's planned 2,000 coal-fired power stations that we're going to build over the next 10 years. He used this analogy. He says, the world is dining out, right? Western industrial nations have started, they've had their starters, they've had their main course, they've developed, used all this energy, did all this pollution, and India and other emerging nations come along for dessert effectively. And we all get presented with the same bill that everybody else is given, and denied the opportunity to realise the potential of our countries and our people. So no, I have serious reservations about what's going on over there just now. It's usually about money, and it's no accident that it's in a wealthy country that's driven by profit, and oil and gas and fossil fuels remain a big part of it, of their future, as it does for the rest of the world. It's just not pragmatic or sensible to look at it any other way, to be completely honest. So no, Humza, get your act together. Stop virtue signalling and start freeing. Start doing something. Listen to Alex. Listen to Hash. Listen to the people of Scotland, and start doing something to free us from our current predicament as a bolt-on to the United Kingdom.
I don't 100% agree with you in your position on the climate, but that said, I was defending you, young man. Someone was suggesting that they were talking nonsense. I invited them onto the show. You had a PhD as well. You're talking about PhD. I said, well, come on, I'll let you debate with Phil. He declined. There's a surprise. The offer's still there, folks, if you want to do it. Yvonne, Ash Regan and her bill that she's putting through Holyrood, we hope it's going to be supported by all pro-independence MSPs. Were you excited when you saw it?
Anything to do with independence gets me excited, Roddy. And, we've got a two-pronged offensive here. We've got the Westminster end, where Neil Hanvey and Kenny McCaskill are pushing ahead with their motion. We've got Ash pushing ahead in Holyrood with her motion. We're the only party that's doing anything at the moment. And, you know, I look again, I know that we really discussed Grangemouth, but my God, if ever there was a warning to the people of Scotland, it's the closure of its only oil refinery, because we'll be forced to go cap in hand, begging bowl, Tommy Sheppard like that, to England every time we need to have our oil refined. And this great asset and energy robbery is just the start. There's the oil, the gas, the electricity. They'll come for our water as well, being absolutely no doubt as it all flows south. And what will Scotland get out of it, sweet FA? If Alex Salmond was the First Minister, the people of Grangemouth wouldn't be afraid of Christmas coming. There would be, you know, their jobs would be safe, the refinery would be safe, Scotland's reputation would be safe, and those thieving robber barons from London wouldn't dare come over the border to steal and plunder our natural resources. And the only way we're going to stop this, folks, is by independence. And we shouldn't be asking for independence. We should just bloody well take it.
Here. Yeah, that's what we like. Everyone's up in arms. Eva, I've got to tell you, your picture's much better with your phone. It's a cracking picture. The Ashes motion, it really has to be embraced by all the pro-independence or alleged pro-independence people. If they don't, here's the thing, Eva, if they don't, that the Scottish voters will see, you know, clearly, you know, without any reservation, who's for independence and who's for filling their own bank books.
Exactly. I think when immediately after the press conference, which I think was the presentation was by Ali Kandash and Tasmina Ahmed Sheikh. Immediately after that, when people comment, one of the first was Joanna Cherry, who remarked positively on this incentive and said that it was something that she felt that her party should be talking about getting behind. Since then, there's been pretty well silence from all of her colleagues, which is an extreme disappointment in the circumstances. I'm not aware that the Greens have remarked, but we know that for them, independence is no longer a red line. Beyond that, though, it's very interesting to see on social media the reactions from people who are lifelong independentistas and party activists. You know, the real backbone of the SNP, the people like Lloyd, who have hung on in there in the hope that common sense and decency would prevail once more, and that the party's raison d'etre of independence would be resurrected and prioritised. And one who was most forthright in his commentary was a fellow solicitor called Paul Kirkwood, who said quite plainly, this is a good thing, let's get on with it. The people should be able to speak, we should be able to talk honestly and openly about our desire for independence. Now, he's right, because we should not be falling out along party lines. We shouldn't have to read comments from the likes of Pete Wishart, who tries to make it relevant by saying, oh, look, here's Alba, the 2% party, trying to tell people what to do. Well, the SNP used to be at 2%. When I was elected as a councillor in 1992, there were 3 SNP councillors out of a council of 12. So everybody has to start somewhere. But the important thing about the Alba initiative is that it is one that every independentista in the country should be able to support. It's not about party politics. It's about what's best for the people of Scotland, and it prioritises independence. It's democratic. It's a proposal for a draft bill which basically says to the people of Scotland, do you want the right to vote for independence? Do you want to see the powers of the Scottish Parliament extended to cover the right to vote for independence? Who can possibly claim to support Scottish independence and refuse to support the sentiment behind that announcement? Nobody. So if Humza Yousaf Cabinet don't support it, if Patrick Harvey and Lorna Slater and Ross Greer don't support it, That will tell the people of Scotland all they need to know about the priorities of the leaders of those parties who speak with a forked tongue. And it's high time they either put up or shut up and left the stage for people who are prepared to go for it and to take no more lessons from Westminster about where and when the people of Scotland can decide for themselves what their own future destiny should be.
It does, Lloyd, it's putting not just pro-independence people on notice, it's also telling the unionists, you know, if this goes through, you cannot go against the voice of the people. And I see Fergus Ewing, like another good independence man, as you would expect with that name. He's saying to Humza, don't put a candidate up against Angus next year. You know, otherwise you're going to hand the seat to Labour. Will Humza and the SNP, you know, you've got a better finger on the pulse than the rest of us here. Will they listen to Fergus and the voices of reason? Will they support a pro-independence bill going through Holyrood? What are you hearing on the street?
I unfortunately get the sense that they would prefer to lose the seat than to support Angus Brendan McNeill. That's the feeling I'm getting. I don't understand it. I think it's foolish, but it begs a question. You know, some weeks ago we talked about the reappointment of Kevin Pringle, the political maestro par excellence of the early 2000s. His influence, if anything, appears not to be around in the SNP at the moment. Everything they're doing is gaff filled. You know, the failure to announce prior to Ineos's statement about Grangemouth, instead of undercutting that with their own statement, getting on top of things before they happen. That was Kevin Pringle's, you know, expertise was in doing these things. What I'm not understanding at the moment is why everything seems to be a dropped ball or a forward pass every single time. The opportunity here is, if they don't stand against Angus Brendan, then it's an olive branch to the movement. That's effectively what it would be. It would also, I think, effectively guarantee that Angus Brendan keeps his seat. And if you think about what the possibility is, if he loses the seat, then we have that horrible creature that used to operate for the Daily Record and the Sunday Mail will become the NP for the Western Isles. And that will be a retrograde step, not just for the poor, unfortunate people of the Western Isles, but it will be a retrograde step for the movement. It'll be a retrograde step for independence. It'll be a retrograde step for Scotland. Now, the only way you can judge if they do put someone up against, if they can find someone stupid enough to stand against Angus Brendan McNeill, then effectively that is them saying it's over. And if you combine standing someone against Angus Brendan with refusal to support Ash's bill, refusal to support Neil Hanvey and Kenny's bill at Westminster, then they're telling every independent supporter not to bother voting for them. I do not understand how they can analyse it in that manner, that they don't see that you can't have a party telling the world for 70 years that we are the party of independence and then take every possible step to keep independence further and further and further away. They will pay a heavy, heavy price. And even if it was just a matter of them looking at it coldly as how do we hold on to the maximum number of seats for our own personal benefit, then you wouldn't stand against Angus Brendan. You would be looking for every possible opportunity to bring all of those pro-independence voters who have not been voting at the Westminster elections since 2017, right, in increasing numbers. You've got a chance of bringing them back on board. But it's lemming time again. Here we are. It's lemmings over the cliff.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, would I be right saying that Kevin Pringle's, if you like, line boss is none other than super bowman, Mr. Murrayfoot? That probably explains why he's behaving like he is.
But even at that, Roddy, why would Kevin Pringle, who understands the nature of the movement, having been part of it for so long, it understands the nature of the party, why would he allow an ex-New Labour hack to tell him what to do? He's the one with the political experience here. Murray Foot's for want of a better word, a management class journalist, who did the bidding of the Labour Party for years and years and years. I mean, that's effectively what he was, a Labour Party propagandist. Now, Kevin Pringle's smarter than that. You didn't have to be smart to be a Labour Party propagandist. It was easy because either Bob Maxwell was paying your wages or Barclay Brothers were paying your wages. There was no issue. I just find it's one of the great mysteries of the moment. Where is Kevin Pringle in all of this? If Kevin Pringle has he banged his head? Is he in a coma somewhere? Because I'm not seeing the imprint of a guy who led us to, in a lot of ways, led the campaign along with Alec to gain the majority in 2007. I'm not seeing it.
If you're watching, Kevin, get in touch. We'd love to have you on here and you can explain to us what's going on. You're welcome. Any pro-independence person is welcome on here. As is any unionist. Come on and have a chat with us. We're delighted to hear your point of view. We've had one on already. I've got to say we'd be delighted to have anyone else because we need all of yous. Phil, the other thing is, talking of views, come out today, the BBC is losing vast numbers of viewers. In fact, the way things are going here, a few more viewers in Prism will be beating the BBC, I tell you. They dropped another 5% of their viewers in the last 12 months, down to 13% of Scots now only watch once a week. It was up at 38% back in 2020, so it's dropping like a stone. Like the SNP, they don't seem to want to listen to the Scottish people who are saying, we're not taking your bullshit anymore, and lies, and what you're not telling us.
Yeah, I mean it should be embarrassing, but the problem we've got here is I kind of hope so that we are turning off the BBC because we know it's a mouthpiece for the establishment, has been for a long time, and the 54%, yes, is significant. More and more people are waking up to the mainstream media lies and those of the SNP leadership. So yeah, fingers crossed that trend will continue and the mainstream media continues to lose out. Sad to see it for the good journalists out, the objective journalists out there, but it has to resonate with the people, and the mainstream media is not resonating with the people. It's a tool of the establishment, and people are seeing it for what it is. On Fergus Ewan telling Humza not to put a candidate against Angus, will Humza listen? No, Lloyd is right. But they do see it as damaging them. That's what I would disagree with Lloyd. That they continue to listen to his master's voice, and that is continue to do what you're doing to disrupt to keep your seat in the gravy train, look after yourself, or they'll pull whatever leverage they have on those currently in charge, the cabal that is Nicola, Humza and the like. So hopefully, but I agree with you, both of you, hopefully Kevin will be part of the change within SNP that needs to come if SNP are to survive. Let's get some popcorn and see what happens, But no, it's a definite. They won't listen to the Humza won't listen to the independence movement. He will listen to do and do as directed. The same puppet master that put Nicola in power and put Humza where he is now. This failure sits squarely with Nicola, Humza and their ilk. The establishment, I don't blame the establishment. They're just doing their job, and London has nothing for disdain but disdain for the Highlanders and the Islanders. There's a saying we need to correct, that we need to repair on the islands, understood in the islands. And the saying goes like something like this. In London they don't like us, but in Edinburgh they hate us. And that must not be the case. That has to change. And the Lee Anderson, the Tory party chairman proposal is send refugees and asylum seekers to Orkney or other remote Scottish islands. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. Just because his idiotic Rwanda plan's going to fail is madness. This guy's calling for Again, another slap in the face for islanders. And check it out. He says people arriving in small boats should be housed in the Orkney Islands, which he said would be perfect for such people fleeing persecution. And then he asked about reports that the Home Office had considered sending migrants to the Falklands Islands. His double standards here are so obvious. They said as a backup to Rwanda, the Home Office considering sending immigrants and asylum seekers to the Falkland Islands. And Anderson came back and said, well, it's a bit far to go and it's not fair on the islanders. So why is it fair on the Shetland or Orkney Islanders? Nah, these guys are just gung-ho clowns, and we need to get rid. For God's sake, let's get rid.
The funny thing was, later in the week when he was talking in Parliament, Lee Anderson, he said that if they reversed Brexit, he was going to move to Orkney. So he wants to go all the asylum seekers that he hates so much. Really, what's he got to go? What doesn't he like about you Orcadians? I don't know. That's a shame to you. And again, if you vote Liberal all the time, you know what I mean? No wonder they treat you with contempt. Anyway, Yvonne, you are a journalist by trade. You are the who works for them all. Are you surprised to see that things like the BBC are failing and the Dead Tree Press is collapsing?
Well, I'm not surprised, and my understanding is that the Nine, which is the flagship news show on the BBC Scotland, is scrambling helplessly, and it doesn't even have 15,000 viewers a night. This is a national TV show, you know, and 15,000 viewers is pathetic. And those are the figures that I'm told about, so it could be a lot lower. The BBC is scrambling around. One of the things that Alapa needs to do, I think, as we look to the future, is to come up with an idea for our own national TV station. Because I'm sick of, living in the borders, I can't get to see the national team play. I get all sorts of England games, but I can't watch Scotland play. And which is probably not a bad thing at the moment, the way they are playing. But, you know, I should be able to see the national team of the country I'm living in, and I can't. The news service down in the borders, no wonder they're all Tory voters. All they get are farming shows from Cumbria and fed a diet of news from over the border. And it's a really shocking, poor service. So it's understandable in many ways that, we get this. You were talking about Murray Foote. I remember him when I was on the news desk of the Daily Mirror, and he was some backbench night editor that had hardly any status at all. I think he might have been looking after the Scottish edition, but he was a man of very little importance, and nobody took any notice of him. And it's just bringing him back. It's just such a lackluster thing to do. It's like reheating toast. It's not going to work. But anyway, I mean that's the way they are at the moment, and of course the breaking news.
Slap it into them. That's what I say.
But the breaking news when Prism started tonight was that Mike Russell is leaving. Well, where's he going? He won't be leaving to put on a pair of carpet slippers and sink into oblivion. What's he going to do? He'll have some cushy number carved out, no doubt.
Yeah, well, we had a quick discussion that Lloyd was saying to me, we to look after his landowning friends. There you go. Well, the clock's clicking on here, Eva, and there's a couple of things I really want to get on. One of them is Lady Dorian this week was giving evidence at a Holyrood committee on law reform, e.g. for our viewers, things like getting rid of juries at trials, etc. and she was quite scathing of what the government are proposing. Can you give our viewers a wee quick background on that?
Yeah, this is really interesting. This is the questioning by the Equality, Human Rights and Civil Justice Committee of several judges, having previously heard from some leading lawyers. The battle of the brains, it was not. The committee was described by some of the judiciary as inept, which was, pretty polite and putting it mildly. What this arises from is a report done in 2019 called Fit for the Future, a report of the independent review of legal services in Scotland. And the author was appointed a woman called Esther Roberton. So she had explained how she thought legal services should be regulated. Now, for the sake of the public watching this, lawyers and legal services are currently regulated by different bodies, but ultimately the buck stops with the Lord President of the Court of Session and the Faculty of Advocates, so that there is an element of independence. And the issue that's before the Scottish Parliament Committee at the moment is to do with proposals that are in a bill to the effect that the new mode of regulation should include oversight and decisions made by Scottish ministers, which would in effect arguably completely politicise the regulation of legal services and thereby jeopardise the independence of the entire legal system, especially the judiciary, and make it open to political influence and perhaps malign manipulation. And in essence, that's what the evidence has been that was given by judges as to this attack on the independence of the system. But because the importance of it all is that our judiciary and our legal services and lawyers like me are supposed to be able to be entirely independent so that we are not interfered with by the state and we're not under the influence of government or parliament, because we believe in a democracy, in the rule of law and in the separation of powers. Unfortunately, the Scottish government and parliament look like they're going down the very dark road of regulation of the legal system by politicians. And politicians ought not to be allowed to interfere in the independence of either the legal profession or the judiciary. It's as simple as that in a democracy. Now, that debate will continue, but interestingly, the woman whose review has led to this, Esther Roberton, also gave evidence and said that the bill, as drafted for the Scottish Parliament, does not actually reflect her recommendations. So the author of the review doesn't like the bill, lawyers don't like the bill, the Faculty of Advocates don't like the bill, and our most senior judges don't like the bill, all for the same reason, which is that it comprises political influence. So once again, unfortunately, an SNP government that all of us here helped to elect are driving a coach and horses through the democratic principles that lay the foundation to the Scottish legal system, which was the envy of the world. They've tried to do it already in the context of single judge trials and doing away with juries. They're talking about doing away with corroboration, as we know. They're making life extremely difficult for those of us who believe in democracy and a civilised rule of law on which to base our entire system. So this debate will run and run, but it's well worth keeping a close eye on, because those politicians who sit on that committee and who have been quizzing the smartest, sharpest, most capable legal minds actually on the planet, as far as I'm concerned, are signally incapable of understanding the major concepts that are before them in that bill. Our politicians are proving in that committee that they are not fit for purpose, and the lawyers and the judges are running rings round them. That's why you're not seeing that on the BBC every night.
Well, it strikes me, and I speak as a layman here, and that's what I've asked you to talk on, but it strikes to me that the politicians want to get convictions, not necessarily justice or improve the law system. They want to get more convictions so that they can say, look what we've done. That's how it comes across to me. Would that be fair or unfair, Eva?
It seems very fair to me, especially because there were statistics out just this past week on numbers of crimes that have been committed in Scotland in the past year or so. And yet again, we're told that the number that crime has gone down in effect, that overall we have fewer people being reported and fewer crimes being established and prosecuted and people convicted. And I can't get my head around that, because if that was the case, would we not see a reduction in the number of people in prisons? But we know prisons are overflowing. Would we not also see a reduction in the number of people that are in prison on remand pending trial? But no, those numbers are also at record levels too. So there's something very wrong, and I suggest a manipulation of statistics, as well as an unnecessary, and I would say dark, manipulation of processes is underway and has been underway for some time in the heart of the Scottish establishment.
Yeah. Lloyd, you've got a bit of interest in this topic as well.
Well, yeah, and I read through the explanatory notes, and I also read the Law Society's response to this crazy bill. And one thing leapt out at me. I think Eva's covered the main central issues, but the one thing that leapt out at me, and I think this is also an element of it, is the constant reference to the market and the concept of opening the market. Now, if you create a new regulator and you open that regulator to people who are not fully qualified in Scots law, that is kind of the impression I'm getting. I mean, and I think it's interesting that Esther Robertson was asked to do this inquiry or this report, because she has history and is very well connected into both the civil service but also the Labour Party. She's an ex-Labour Party candidate from many, many moons ago. She was appointed by the Labour Party to be the secretariat to the Constitutional Convention in the 1990s in the run-up to the creation of our devolved parliament. And she's always been a go-to person for delivering what the civil service or the Labour Party want. And I get a hint in this of the market suggestions that have been coming out of Starmer and the Labour Party about opening up the market in England in terms of, now what we're talking about here is legal services. I'm very, very disturbed by the concept that we see, or the concept that brings the concept or the idea of the market to something like justice and law. It's a dangerous place to go. What Eva said is absolutely correct. Anything and everything about our Scottish legal system has been admired from afar. It's why it's been under constant kind of, not constant attack, but nibbling away at the power of Scottish law since the Act of Union in real terms. Now, the fact that our legal establishment are suggesting that this is a dangerous route to go, everyone should listen. But the most important part of it is, having read through parts of the bill, having read the explanatory notes, I know for a fact the people in that chamber, a very, very small number of them, will even be able to follow the discussion, never mind understand the nature of the debate. That's a real problem. It's a real problem. And I fear what could happen, because in a way this could be like the GRR, where certain very stupid people, rather than admit their own stupidity, dug their heels in and said, no, we are doing this because this is the right thing. I can see the same thing happening with this, because some of these people do not want to be exposed for the empty vessels that they are.
Yeah. And Maggie Chapman did that with Lady Dorian. It was cringeworthy what she did. Time, as I say, clock's clicking on so many things. I want Phil, our new Chief Constable, who I believe our Yvonne's already written to, a fellow Northumbrian. We couldn't find someone in Scotland that could fill this job, and she's commuting to England when her day's over or her week's over. using cop cars. It was a bit of a gaffe, was it not?
I'd say so. I mean, there's absolutely no reason why we can't find a completely acceptable candidate in Scotland. In fact, this reminds me exactly of how this happens and why it happens. As an ex-cop, I know quite a few senior police officers in Scotland who I spoke to in mid to late 2015. When the next Chief Constable of Police Scotland, I think that kicked off about 2013, I believe, when the forces were unified. And then in late, I think it was December 2015, Phil Gorman was selected as Chief Constable of Police Scotland. And he took office, I think, sometime in 2016. Now, when in Parliament, I spoke with Michael Matheson, the then Cabinet Secretary for Justice at the time, along with Alex Salmond, about this. And I put forward or voiced my concern that the choice of the police officers and senior police officers of Scotland, of a person who supported at the time that there was a push for zero tolerance, and that's taken away the discretion of police officers. See the PC Murdoch and the Bruins and all this type of stuff. The local Bobby who understands all the people and pulls their ear and takes them home to their ma and tells them off instead of getting them a police record. Community policing, someone that understands policing, someone that understands people, allowing police officers to make these decisions. This is what the candidate that I was advocating, I was pushing, I was helping some of the senior police officers get that message to what they hoped would be the decision makers in the selection, or certainly major influencers in the selection of the next police chief in Scotland. But as I became aware during and after this conversation, the person the police officers and senior police want in Scotland is never selected. It's always a political appointment, and a UK establishment political appointment at that. So there's no surprises here that this woman from, no matter how radical, no matter how good she is, the bottom line is she's there because the establishment want her there, not because the police officers of Scotland deem her the right and fitting candidate for the job. You're on mute, Roddy.
I've forgotten to switch on my mic. I can't, as the clock ticks on here, I can't let it go past Yvonne without talking about the terrible tragedy that's unfolding in Palestine. It's breaking my heart, the violence, and it's back again. The ceasefire has long gone. But Techie, can you put up this horrific video? We're talking about kids getting cuffed in the ear by police for misbehaving. This is a 9-year-old child, not even in Gaza, in the West Bank this week, a young boy. Can you put it up, Techie? Oh, 9 years of age, Yvonne. Killed by a sniper.
Yeah, and this is the West Bank where Hamas are not in charge, in control. It's shocking. The whole world can now see what sort of occupying power Israel is. And this is damaging not only Israel, who have completely lost the hearts and minds in terms of PR, because they've been caught out so many times lying. But people are now beginning to ask again about Palestine. How did it all start? And of course, the Brits were there with the Balfour Declaration, promising land that it couldn't give to Europeans who had no interest in the Middle East and nothing in common in the Middle East, but off they were sent. And it's the occupied West Bank. There are more than 500,000 barking mad Orthodox Jewish settlers there who are all living in illegal homes, i.e. homes that have been built against international law. And they're heavily armed, and they're going around and they're shooting Palestinians. There was an equally harrowing image yesterday doing the rounds of an Israeli settler stabbing a pregnant Palestinian woman with such a ferocity, and that was in the occupied West Bank as well. And somebody was waiting in a getaway car to take him away from the scene. He'll never go to court, but some 13, 14-year-old kid who throws a stone at a tank will have his home raided at 2 a.m, have his arm broken and his fingers snapped, and be thrown in prison on administrative detention without trial, without charge. These are law-breaking thugs. It's a psychopathic state, and I don't know what's wrong, but the people are damaged. It's a classic case of the abused becoming the abuser.
Absolutely.
And it can't go on. It cannot go on. There is a genocide unfolding before our eyes on television, and that Keir Starmer is still, in lockstep with Tel Aviv, and he is so going to get punished in the general election, because people will not forgive, they will not forget. And one of his biggest cheerleaders, Margaret Hodge, she just did an interview that's also doing the rounds, admitting doing everything in her power by any means necessary to destabilise Jeremy Corbyn and stop him at any price from getting the leadership and winning the election. And I'm thinking, well, surely she should be kicked out of the party. What happened to loyalty in the party? And just, we might not like the leaders that we get or we're given, but, party should come up at the top, but not for her.
As we discussed on here last week, Yvonne, we have got a business party. There's a red business party and there's a blue business party. Nothing else matters. It's disgusting. Because I say the clock's clicking on here, Eva. I've got a 10-year-old grandson, and I look at that video. It blows my mind away. And the public, and I say, it was Craig Murray, our friend Craig Murray, who said, the media and the politicians have bought into the Israeli narrative, but the public aren't buying into it. Will the pressure eventually force the Israelis into behaving like civilized people instead of like, I don't know what, I don't want to use the phrase, but they remind me of a previous regime back in the last century?
I can't really understand what's going on when we've got a UN and an international community who know perfectly well what the definition of war crimes comprises, who understand that collective punishment is a war crime, who understand that you're not to attack civilians, women, children, non-combatants, etc. You don't attack hospitals and schools and all of this, and yet it's been happening with impunity. I don't say that to excuse Hamas by any stretch of the imagination, because there have been war crimes committed on countless occasions in that part of the Middle East over the course of the last few years. But I, for the life of me, cannot understand why there is not an international movement driven by a desire to have A, a permanent ceasefire, B, a two-state solution, and C, bring to immediate justice and immediately arrest and begin to prosecute and build a case against all of the war criminals who are guilty of the most awful activity in that part of the world. The world has gone completely mad if there are actually no statesmen or stateswomen capable of marshalling the forces of good against the evil that we see there every single day.
Lloyd, not long after the Russian tanks rolled into the Donbass, within days, UEFA had kicked all Russian teams, the national team, all the Olympic Committee jumped in and they were treating Russia as a pariah state. We did the same to South Africa to bring them to bear. Now I noticed, anxious like most Scots watching tomorrow's draw for UEFA, I noticed that Israel have got a team in the playoffs. I'm disgusted by that. I want to know why UEFA and FIFA haven't kicked them out to try and bring them to bear. Why is the same pressure not being applied to Israel that's been applied to Russia, that's been applied before to the old Yugoslavia?
It's the foul and despicable double standards, whereby school children were encouraged to dress in yellow and blue after the Russian incursion and to protect the people of the Donbass. We were encouraged to take Ukrainian flags to football matches. We were encouraged to give all kinds of support to Ukraine. Any hint of an attack on a school or a hospital or the death of anyone under the age of 16 was front page news of all the newspapers, top of the headlines on the BBC, on STV and on Channel 4 News. 15,000 human beings are no longer alive because they've been bombed from the sky by the Israeli Air Force. And no one, not UEFA, not FIFA, no one will stand up for them. But we're supposed to stand up and still stand up for Ukraine. The double standards here are utterly and completely extraordinary. The carnage that we're seeing, the killing of that young boy yesterday was only one of two children under the age of 12 who were shot by snipers yesterday. But the most horrifying story of all of the past 2 or 3 days was the Israeli Defense Forces forcing the doctors out of the intensive care unit in the maternity hospital, forcing them at gunpoint to leave the building while leaving 5 children in incubators. 5 children in incubators. How anyone at all can demand of anyone that you must condemn one side or the other, but ignore entirely the vicious brutality of a so-called defense force that knows that by its actions it is starving and killing children. If it were anywhere else in the world, if we did not have this pretend European collective guilt, if it was when it happened in Rwanda in the mid-90s, the world went mad. When it happened in Kosovo, we sent in aircraft to bomb Serbia. The children in the incubators, that's all I can say to people is soldiers forced doctors to leave children in incubators in a hospital. Soldiers.
Yeah, it's appalling. Phil, you'll admit you're a peacenik, anti-war, but even this has stretched me. I can't. The brutality, the viciousness, the genocide. I can't find words to describe my disgust, my revulsion to it all. How about you?
Yeah, with the man's inhumanity to man, it never ceases to troll the depths. We wish they were unfathomable, but they're not. And what I find striking, and it struck me quite recently, was that even those who are Zionists, who are fully supporting the state of Israel, are saying we need to protect Israel from itself, because the right-wing leaders are going so far that they are now at risk of losing Israel. They're at a risk of losing their dream, because of the actions of the extreme right within the Israeli government. Now, there's no denying you've got a right to defend yourself, but when you go out in an all-out offensive that becomes a slaughter like this, and when you see this cruelty, this inhumanity, you have to say it must stop. You have to stand up and say it must stop, which is why the likes of Starmer and all of those who voted against a ceasefire, you're disgraceful human beings. The support for those who would advocate peace, where is it? And the problem is, it's in the hearts and minds of people and the souls of people, but it doesn't talk to politicians the way money does and the way lobbyists do. And that's the problem here. People are driven by money, power, instead of conscience. People like John McLean, who stood up for what was right, you know, gone 100 years ago, just recently. Where are these men and women of principle? Where are those who would stand up for what's right in this world? And what the hell is wrong with us for not doing something and doing more about it?
Is the big concern for me is that Turkey, who everyone seems to be ignoring, seems to be gearing up, and it could end up going to war with Israel. If Israel attacks Turkey, they're a NATO member. What will the United States do? They're then caught between a rock and a hard place. If a NATO member is attacked, albeit by Israel, will America come to the aid of a fellow NATO member? I doubt it. But the killing's got to stop. Anyway, we've run out of time. We've run out of everything. We don't want to have our audience missing their Sunday dinner. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time, your wisdom, and everything you had to say. And to you who have been watching and watching in greater numbers, we greatly appreciate your support. And until we see you all again, you and yours, please take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.